Hello everyone, this is module number 2 of the course MCOM 101. As you remember, in the first module we discussed fundamentals of communication. So now what we are going to do, we are going to take different mediums one by one and discover different topics within those mediums. So firstly, we are taking print media. So this is module number 2 and we are going to discuss print media in this module. This module might be a bit extensive than the previous one because print media is something that you guys are not very well versed with. There are not a lot of people right now who read newspapers on a daily basis. If you do, then that's a very good thing and I'm very happy with that. But if you don't, then don't worry because this is the module where we are going to discuss print media in detail. And by detail, I don't really mean that we'll be discussing a lot about the print media journalism, but at least being a media student, the first step is that you should be able to navigate a newspaper in a proper way. So we will discuss the layout of a newspaper. You should know what makes news or any piece of information newsworthy. So we will discuss different news vectors or news values. And we'll also cover magazines, which again are an important part of print media. So these are the few things that we will be discussing in this module. There are going to be 4 or 5 videos in which we will cover all these topics. So let's get started with module number 2. So now I'm sharing my screen with you and these slides will be emailed to you and these will be uploaded on Moodle so you can further explore all these topics while watching these videos. First of all, the topics that we will cover includes 3 main sections. So first section is going to be overview of newspapers. Then we will discuss news values. And finally, we will discuss magazines. In the overview of newspapers section, there are 3 topics. First of all, we'll discuss the navigation of a newspaper. By navigation, I mean that what is there on which page. So all the different pages or sections of the newspaper that will be discussed here. Then we will discuss the layout of the newspaper, and this is an important section because a few terminologies that are generally used in the industry that will be discussed here. So you should know that which section of the newspaper is called what. So the terminologies will be discussed, and then we will discuss the opinion or the editorial section of a newspaper. This again is something that is very important, and generally there is entire courses on opinion writing that you should be taking later on, but we will touch upon basics of this in this section. In the second one, the news values one, we will discuss 8 news values. So these are the values that makes any piece of information newsworthy. As we will go along, I'll discuss that in detail. And then we will discuss magazines. What really is a magazine, what is the difference between a magazine and a newspaper, what are the different types of magazine, and what is the generic kind of a content and you will find in a magazine on a usual basis. So these are the topics that are going to be discussed in this module. So our first section is overview of newspapers. So let us first explore newspapers. The first thing which is most important for us in exploring the newspaper is to actually know how we should read the newspaper, and for that it is important that we should know how to navigate a newspaper. Generally, if you are reading newspapers in a daily basis, you will know that you know what is usually there on the first page, where you will find the most important stories, where you will find the stories which are related to your city, where are going to be sports news. But if you are not a regular newspaper reader, then perhaps this is something that you should know. So we will try to explore all these things in this topic. So these are basically different parts or sections of the newspaper. I told all of you to at least buy one newspaper, and when you will be watching these videos, you can perhaps see all these sections side by side. But it's completely okay if you don't have a physical newspaper in front of you, because you can check the e-newspapers or the electronic versions of newspapers on all the major websites, and of course they are exactly the same as your original newspaper is. Okay, so basically these are all the sections and pages of the newspapers that you will find, and you can go online and find the electronic versions of these papers as well, and the links have been given right here, and I will be opening a few of these links as well so that you can actually see that what I am talking about. So generally the front page of the newspaper is the page where you will find the most important information of the day. Just like when you are watching television, so the headlines are the one where the most important information of the day, the most important news of the day would be given. Similarly, in a newspaper, first page, page number one, is going to be where there is going to be all the major stories of the day. We all know that newspapers are published on a daily basis. So the news that you will see on a newspaper will be on of yesterday, of a day before. So say if it's 15th, so the newspaper will be carrying would be of 14th of August or whatever that month is. So that is how it works. Let me just open a link and then we can perhaps explore it further. So right there on your screens is the electronic version or the e-paper of Dawn. Dawn is Pakistan's most widely regarded English newspaper. And if there are a few newspapers that you must read if you want to know what is happening in the country and you want to get a good analysis of the situation, then Dawn is definitely going to be one of them. So I'm basically starting off with an English newspaper, but you can also see the same pages on Urdu newspaper. The pattern more or less remains the same. The layout is a bit different. So this is how your newspaper would look when you will get it. And this is page number one, the front page. So in the front page, what we see are the most important stories of the day. Whatever is happening, whatever has happened on a particular day, you will find that. And then when you have to see more important stories, then for that you can check the back page. So here, since it's an electronic version, so all the pages are given like this. So you can see front page over here, and then over there is the back page. I'll just click on it. The back page will include important stories, not as important as the ones that were published in page one, but they are nonetheless very important international as well as national stories that you will find on the back page. So after that, there are a few more pages. For example, in each city, generally newspapers have their own editions. Now, editions are something that are generally used, this terminology is generally used in a newspaper. What really happens is that there are national news, something of national significance, and people living all over the country should know that. So that will be published on the front page. Then there will be more important stories that might be published on the back pages. Then there are separate national pages in which stories from all the different provinces would be published, like you could see over here. So there are 4 national pages, and all of these pages have important stories from all over Pakistan that are published. So stories from rains in Lahore or rains in Karachi to what is happening in Punjab or KP or Sindh or Balochistan or Fata or Gilgit-Baltistan. So all these stories would be there. But we living in Lahore might be more interested in knowing what exactly has been happening in Lahore, right? And the person who might be living in Karachi won't be as much interested in that, because that person needs to know more detailed story of Karachi based events. So what are the different events that happened in the city? Is there anything interesting which is coming up? Is there anything interesting which has been announced? Were there any accidents or incidents like robbery, theft, etc.? So all these things are something which are more interesting to the people who are living in that region. So for that, newspapers have a separate edition or a pages which we generally call metro pages or the city specific pages. So in Dawn, basically those are called metro pages. As you can see here, they say Metro Karachi, Metro Karachi, Metro Islamabad, and then Metro Lahore, and then Metro Peshawar. So since this is the electronic version that we are seeing right now. So definitely they have published all the versions. But if you are living in Lahore, so you will find your newspaper, and only the Metro Lahore version will be attached to it, so that you can find news from the Lahore itself. So that is how these Metro versions or the city specific versions of the newspaper work. All right. Then, furthermore, there are two very interesting pages in English newspapers as well as in Urdu newspapers, which are called editorial page or your opinion page. So, both uh, terms can be used interchangeably. I think, as far as Express Tribune is concerned, they call it editorial and opinion section, while what Dawn does, that they generally call it editorial, and um, both pages are titled as perhaps editorial ones, and they also published opinion articles in that. So what really happens in these pages is that over here you can find analysis of the news, or over the newspaper all that you can find are news items or news stories. What happens, where did it happen, who was involved, why it happened, and questions like that are answered in a specific kind of a format which we call a news writing format. But news is not all that we need. We also use analysis of the news. Whatever is happening in the country, whatever decisions are being made for the people of the country or internationally, what might be the repercussions of those uh, decisions, or if something good has happened, then definitely people should know that what could be the benefits of it. Or if there needs to be some kind of criticism on the government, maybe, or on the opposition, then of course there needs to be some kind of an analysis. What we generally see on television screens, that there are news bulletins, the ones जिसमें आप सारे के सारे न्यूज देखते हो कि आज पूरे दिन में क्या क्या हुआ और लेटेस्ट खबरें कौन सी हैं. But apart from that, at 8 p.m. or at 10 p.m. or at even 7 p.m., you also see these current affair shows. And those current affair shows are meant for what? They are meant for analysis. They are meant for, foster some kind of critical thinking in you in terms of what is happening in the country and all over the world. So, for the same purpose, newspaper basically publish these opinions and editorial pages. And what really is there in these opinion or editorial pages are basically editorials of the newspaper itself. So editorial pages भी उनको कहा जाता है, but editorial एक specific term भी है जो कि use होती है जहाँ पे newspaper जो है वो किसी भी latest issue से related अपनी जो है एक पॉलिसी देता है या उसके बारे में थोड़ी बहुत बात करता है. So that is newspaper's own policy most of the time, and किसी individual की वो जो है opinion नहीं होती है. So in the Dawn editorial you can see these three are basically the editorials of the day that Dawn has published. And then apart from that, we also need to know what people who are very famous or who are the experts of their specific fields want to say about the happenings in the country or otherwise. What does the journalists who have these keen eye on the world affairs want to say about things? So for that, columns are published. So these are editorials, and this one, the one that has the name of the person along with the picture, is basically a column. So we will discuss that later on. But in these pages, these things are published. In the editorial pages, your columns are published, your editorials are published. Generally, they also have a cartoon and letters to that. So again, these are very important pages, and you can generally find them at the middle of the newspaper if it's an English newspaper. So generally, जो उसका fold होता है, उसमें जो है आपको वो उन पेजेस पे opinions और editorials मिलते हैं. But as far as Urdu newspapers are concerned, they could be on any page. But the layout is such that you will know okay, these are not your general news items. This is an editorial page of the newspaper. Then there are other sections, like you could see the business section. Then for international news, there is international section. Then there is always going to be a sports edition के sports की दुनिया से क्या ताज़ा तरीन खबरें हैं, ठीक है. And then there are going to be editions which are related to leisure or entertainment. So all these are basically different parts or different sections of the newspaper that you will find. Advertisements का भी generally एक page होता है, so in this one we cannot find one, but advertisements भी newspapers में publish होते हैं. इसके अलावा ऑन डिफरेंट डेज सेपरेट मैगजीन एडिशंस भी आते हैं जो कि किसी एक स्पेसिफिक किस्म की नीश को टारगेट कर रहे होते हैं. लाइक फॉर एग्जांपल ऑन ट्यूसडे दे वुड हैव दिस किड्स का एडिशन जिसमें बच्चों से रिलेटेड जो है वो आर्टिकल्स और न्यूज आइटम्स और डिफरेंट किस्म के फीचर्स होते हैं. एट द सेम टाइम मे बी ऑन संडे जनरली ऑल द न्यूज़पेपर्स हैव दीज 4-5 एडिशन जिसमें वो स्पेसिफिक बहुत ही नीश किस्म का जर्नलिज्म होता है जिसमें फीचर्स होते हैं, बुक रिव्यूज हो सकते हैं, एंटरटेनमेंट से न्यूज रिलेटेड न्यूज होती हैं, इंटरव्यूज होते हैं सेलिब्रिटीज के एंड ऑल दीज थिंग्स. तो वो सारे वंस वी विल डिस्कस मैगजीन्स इन डिटेल्स वी विल टच अपॉन दोस मैगजीन्स एडिशंस एज वेल. So this was Dawn, but generally whichever newspaper you will pick up, you will find these sections or these pages in those newspapers. चाहे वो उर्दू के newspapers हो or they are English newspapers. So over here in the presentation, I have basically pasted links of all the major English as well as Urdu newspapers that you can find on the internet. So it's okay if you cannot purchase newspapers. What you can simply do is to check these links. These are e-papers, right? Because if you will just go to dawn.com or the news.com.tk, what you will find is their website version. But the layout that we are going to discuss next is basically going to be about the print version. So only check these links if you want to further explore the layout, because the website's layout is totally different from the print layout. So these are electronic versions of the paper and you will find exactly same print versions over here. So now we are going to discuss the layout of the newspaper.